Good morning, everybody. This is a live severe weather briefing on the massive enhanced risk in a textbook hail-producing setup that is dominating the central U.S. From central and eastern Missouri across central and southern Illinois through large portions of Kentucky and Tennessee into northeastern Arkansas, and even a southern mode as well in far southern Texas associated with a completely separate area of upper level flow. We're going to be breaking down all of it, forecast photographs in both modes, the forecast convective evolution through this afternoon and this evening, and we're also going to look at the long range as Saturday and Sunday looks extremely active from portions of central and eastern Texas through also Arkansas, Louisiana overnight, extending east over a large portion of Dixie Alley. Given the recent forecast model trends, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a pretty substantial tornado outbreak, multiple day outbreak here on Saturday and Sunday. But first of all, we've got to get through today, and it looks like there's going to be massive chunks of ice falling out of the sky from these supercell storms, beginning first in central and northern Missouri, possibly impacting the St. Louis area into central and southern Illinois, and eventually spreading into Kentucky and Tennessee. But there are some severe storms that are ongoing right now as well. But first, I wanted to show you this enhanced risk area. This is from this morning, but it hasn't changed at all. You can see a massive blob of enhanced there, and this is because there's a massive blob of moisture. There's decent moisture there, dew points in the upper 60s, low 60s a little bit on the northwest side of that risk area, but there's so much cold air aloft with this northwesterly flow setup that this is a perfect hail producing event with a very large blob of low-level heat and moisture and very cold air coming in aloft. That creates an unstable configuration for those large chunks of ice to form in these storms. And when you get a rotating updraft, the updraft strength is even more intense. So with these supercell storms that are first going to develop around this region here, central Missouri into west central Illinois, those are going to move east-southeast, and they're going to be dropping very large hail. There's a lot of dry air at the mid-levels too that's coming in from the west-northwest that's going to steepen those lapse rates, or the rate at which temperature cools with height. And as I mentioned, there's also that southern mode too down near Austin and San Antonio, where there could be some large hail producing supercells as well. That's in the right entrance region of basically a southern branch to that jet stream. It's a subtropical branch to the jet, but it's on top of that anticyclone that is in place over the Gulf of Mexico. And this massive anticyclone has been in place down here for quite some time so far this spring. And I believe that's why those sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are so far above normal, because of the lack of cloud cover that has been happening over the Gulf there. But the Gulf of Mexico is going to be open for business after this storm moves through. The cutoff system in the southwestern U.S. is going to finally eject over the weekend, and that's going to pump a lot of moisture northward. But even today, there's plenty of moisture. We've seen this setup happen a few times this year with northwesterly flow or zonal flow or jet streaks coming over top this very large blob of moisture. And today it looks like it's going to contribute to major large hail producers. And here are some severe storms that are ongoing right now. This is the Radar Omega app. You've got some supercells that are to the south of Cincinnati across northern Kentucky here that are dropping hail larger than quarters in some cases. This one right here just to the southwest of the Covington, Kentucky radar site, just to the south of Sanders is a big-time hail core. And these are some supercell structures too. They're just a little bit elevated here, but because of those mesocyclones, elevated mesocyclones, they've got some enhanced updrafts, and these storms are able to suspend very large hail high up into the storm. There you can see that hail core between Sanders and Owenton in northern Kentucky, moving off to the southeast. And let's take a look at some of the rotation up in these storms as well. I could show you those mesocyclones. There you can see some of those mesocyclones. This close to the radar, these are not low-level mesocyclones. The mesocyclones are based just a little bit above the radar beam, but you can still see the mesocyclonic indication there, at least some convergence with these storms. But those mesocyclones are increasing the updrafts of these cells across northern Kentucky, and that's why we've got these severe thunderstorm warnings so far. And these are south-southeasterly movers, textbook northwesterly flow type of an event there. You can also see that mesocyclone on the eastern corner of the screen to the northeast of Fleming. Look at him. Just moving off to the south, southeast. Very intense, large hail producers across northern Kentucky. And this is why that enhanced risk is so large, covering large portions of Kentucky and Tennessee. These storms are ongoing right now, and there's going to be additional storms developing later on this afternoon across central Missouri into eastern Missouri, impacting areas like St. Louis, over to Champaign, Illinois as well. And these are likely going to be warned later on. Additionally, you can see a flash flood warning down here as we're getting a little bit into West Virginia. And also a severe thunderstorm warning there as that's moved to the southeast. That's near Hurricane, West Virginia. You're under a flash flood warning. Charleston is under a flash flood warning. That severe storm is passing just to the south of the Charleston area. At least that larger hail core is. But certainly just to the south of the Charleston area, there is a large hail producing storm heading that way. You can see the flash flood warning here. That includes hurricane down through the Charleston area. And now here is the 500 millibar pattern that is responsible for the different modes of severe weather today. Here is that subtropical branch of the jet that I was talking about that is over this ridge or anticyclone off to the south. These storms down in South Texas are going to form in the right entrance region. So whenever you have a mid and upper level jet streak, there's usually lift at the entrance region or the exit region, the left exit region and the right entrance. You can see it. There's probably going to be some lift way out here, but really the right entrance region of this subtropical branch is what's going to initiate storms down in that southern mode. And then you've got this big trough coming into the northern branch, and it's just ahead of that stronger flow where those supercells are going to initiate later on this afternoon. This is actually the forecast for about 7 p.m., so it shows the jet streak moving all the way across central Illinois by this time, firing storms from central Illinois all the way back down through the St. Louis area and into the Ozarks. And eventually, those storms are likely going to pass into northeastern Arkansas toward this evening. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some pretty substantial supercells on the southern end of this flow that turn right through that complex terrain that is the Ozarks and southern Missouri into northern Arkansas. Definitely something to keep an eye on. But it's really this northern branch here coming in that's going to fire these storms on the southeastern and southern and eastern flank of that stronger flow, and the cyclonic vorticity advection coming in here as well. This is cyclonic curvature right here in the flow. The flow is trying to go in a cyclonic direction here, and this cyclonic curvature creates lift in the atmosphere right along the leading edge. This is where you start to get positive vorticity advection ahead of this upper level system, and you're also getting cold advection aloft at the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere over this region where there's quite a bit of low level heat and moisture in place. And now let's break down the low levels, that 850 millibars that we always talk about a kilometer above the ground, that is so important for tornado genesis, because we know there's going to be very large hail today. That's a certainty. The tornado threat, though, is a little bit more complicated. This is the 850 millibar analysis, and you can see that trough axis at 850 at the low levels coming in here in the northwesterly flow. And just ahead of that 850 millibar axis is the shear that we really want to analyze. That's in this area out ahead of these storms. It's possible this stronger flow up here in central Illinois could be ahead of a subtle surface low up there. There could be a little bit stronger wind shear in central Illinois up there. That also could be convective feedback issues. But really what you have here, about 25 knots at 850 out of the west-southwest over southeastern Missouri into central southern Illinois. And this is the realistic environment, the shear that is available to these supercell storms as they develop to the west and to the northwest of St. Louis and move southeast into this environment. We'll look at the forecast photographs from this zone and compare the forecast photographs from central Illinois to those further south in southeastern Illinois and to northeastern Arkansas. And we'll also look at some forecast soundings down here in Texas. There's a lot of deep layer shear down here, more than sufficient to have supercells down in the southern mode, but you can see there's a major lack of that low level flow down here, and that's because the upper level flow is largely anticyclonically curved on the top of that anticyclone dominating the Caribbean and Southern Gulf. And because of that, you really need to have a trough in cyclonic curvature at the upper levels upstream to trigger that low level jet and to get one of those really strong 850 jets, 30, 40, 50 knots out of the south. That's what we're going to see on Saturday and Sunday ahead of this big time trough. It's going to finally eject from the southwest. You can see it's cut off out there now. And once this system clears, it'll give the atmosphere in Gulf of Mexico a little bit of a chance to breathe. And then that low-level jet will fire up on Friday and start pumping that moisture northward in anticipation of a pretty substantial 2-day tornado outbreak that I think could happen. Now let's look at the Dewpoints forecast by the HRRR, and I want to highlight with this an issue that often happens with these models, or at least the HRRR. What you can see to the north of this, to the northwest of that main moisture axis that forecasted by the HRRR is going to surge up through the Mississippi River Valley, and it's doing that, as we'll see on the surface map. But this area of dryness across the Ozarks into southeastern Missouri, into southern Illinois, likely shows that the moisture on the northwestern side of this blob is a little bit shallow, but it also shows that the HRRR model often way mixes out dew points. It overdoes this mixing process, or a drying out of the atmosphere, bringing that dry air from just above the ground down to the surface and getting rid of those dew points. This seems unreasonable based on the surface map and looking at the other short-range models like the forecast wrap and other models. I think we're definitely going to have dew points in the mid-60s, at least up here in southeastern Missouri, up even toward the St. Louis area, central southern Illinois. But this is mixing right here, bringing down dry air aloft, and this model is notorious for overdoing the mixing process during the spring. But you've got plenty of deep dew points down here across Arkansas, even into the low 70s. So let's look at the actual observations, and I'll show you what those dew points are doing. The dew point is the bottom number in this map, the temperature is the top. And in southeastern Missouri, you've got dew points well into the upper 60s here in southeastern Missouri. Poplar Bluff, 78 over 67. Very warm, sunny, getting sunnier with time. You do have a little bit of mixing here to the northwest of the Ozarks, but still dew points are 60 into the low 60s. And then you've got big mid and upper 60s dew points dominating much of southern Illinois. Here, though, you do have dew points in the 50s behind that convection yesterday. So I do think that the severe weather is mainly going to be south and east of a line like this. So near St. Louis and to the southeast, up toward just to the south, maybe near Effingham area, to the southeast of Springfield. I think that this is where the most substantial severe weather is going to be. And look at some of these dew points down in Arkansas into the low 70s. They're streaming up the Mississippi River Valley here. Even without a big-time low-level jet, you've got some pretty weak winds here at the surface. You've just got this blob of moisture sitting there that has gotten deeper over the last few days. And I really don't see the dew points mixing out into the 50s and 40s here across southeastern Missouri. Looking at the recent wrap and analyzed surface-based CAPE, you can see that big blob of instability just sitting here. Some of those CAPEs even analyzed in excess of 3,000 across this area. These storms across northern Kentucky, even though you've got really weak low-level shear with westerly winds at the surface at 5 knots, you've still got sufficient deep layer shear for the development of these elevated, or at least some supercell structures. But really with these westerly winds at the surface, straight line photographs or left and right splits are equally favored out here. So I don't see a tornado threat developing, at least in the eastern side of the mode early on. And you can even see a cyclonic curvature to the low-level wind field here. That's going to keep this area void of convection all afternoon. And really you're watching this area up here ahead of the surface low in northern Missouri that's diving off to the southeast. This is where I'm watching for convective initiation later on this afternoon, probably about 3, 4 o'clock, and those storms are going to pass off to the east-southeast, moving into that deeper moisture that we've seen on the surface map. They're also going to back build down into the Ozarks here of southern Missouri, maybe even into far northern Arkansas, and eventually they could even move into this environment later on this evening. And overnight tonight, a squall line or that band of storms continues to move off to the southeast, even into portions of central Tennessee eventually. Here is the HRRR forecast dew points that I was telling you about, with all of that mixing across southeastern Missouri. And you've really got dew points already in Poplar Bluff up toward Cape Girardeau, 67, 68 out here. And this dropping of the dew points to the 40s is just not going to happen. This is just a poor model run with the dew points there. And that means that the initiation could also be wrong. So you want to take this with a grain of salt here when we are looking at the convective evolution here in the HRRR, and it still fires storms even despite that mixing. You can see it has kind of this multicellular look to it, though. That's because these are in dew points in the 40s because of that mixing, and I would expect these to be isolated supercells producing very large hail. And again, the area that I'm watching for initiation is to the northwest of St. Louis. This storm is probably going to be a bit elevated. Dew points right now this far north in Springfield are around 50 into the low 50s. These are going to be surface-based storms, though. They're going to move southeast into that environment. The HRRR has been consistent in showing a couple renegades down here in the heart of the Ozarks and far south central Missouri into northern Arkansas. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on that as well. This is at 5 p.m. Central Time in addition. And then that convective band moving through St. Louis, 5, 6 p.m. with big-time hail, maybe even an isolated tornado threat. And even though despite that mixing that's happening, at least the area, and you can see it, the impact that mixing has on the low-level shear here, with the wind shear much less than 75 units. If you believe the HRRR, there's really not going to be a tornado threat, but the reason that it has this unusually low-level shear is because of that mixing. And we can definitely see that on the forecast sounding here with this inverted V sounding. And this isn't even in the heart of the mixing. This has a dew point of about 60. But still, a photograph that would have a non-zero threat of a tornado here. You've got quite a bit of curvature. Those magnitudes, though, of the low-level flow are really low, all less than about 20 knots. But you've got a lot of mid and upper-level flow for those development of supercell storms and deep mesocyclones. And then you've got a lot of CAPE up above this. I would block this inverted V sounding out. That's way too dry, even for the 60 dew point there. Yeah. So let's bring on back over to the RAP, which I believe has a more accurate depiction of the thermodynamics that are happening here. This is at 17Z, and then you go to 21Z, which is about 4 p.m., and it has initiation to the northwest of St. Louis. It does have those surface winds veering quite a bit out of the west-southwest, so the wind shear, at least in the Missouri portion, early on is going to be a bit limited, but then that convective line moves southeast. Broken band of supercells from St. Louis to the south of Springfield up toward the Champaign area, back all the way into the Ozarks of southern Missouri. But really, this is the convective band of supercells through central Illinois back into eastern Missouri. And the HRRR also has storms here, but just with that intense mixing, it's got to be right for the wrong reasons. Still, though, I would say confidence is very high in a band of very large hail-producing supercells from central Illinois back into central Missouri, eventually spreading into southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, and southern Illinois with those deeper moisture. And if those supercells can maintain discrete modes as they move into that deeper moisture, anything can happen. With these northwest flow events, a lot of times they become surprisingly substantial tornado producers. The RAP seems to have a better handle on the low-level shear than the HRRR. It has a more accurate handle on the Dewpoints, a more accurate handle on the mixing out here. And it has effective storm relative felicities in the 150 to 200 range from central Illinois down into southeastern Missouri. These are inflated a bit, probably by northerlies behind the convective line. So really you're talking about quite marginal shear for a tornado threat. There's probably going to be severe thunderstorm watches issued for these, big hail, tornado warning or two out there. If I were targeting anywhere, I'd probably be sitting just to the west of St. Louis right now, waiting for those storms to develop. I would want to get on those hail producers early in northern Missouri for this event. So that's what we're looking at for this setup. I'm going to look at the long range though as well, now that these new models are starting to come in, and we'll break down the Saturday and the Sunday threat. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Looking through these comments and questions in the live stream. Tornado warning in West Virginia, so let's pull that up here. Yep, there it is. That's a tornado warning. Right on near the highway here. This is to the southeast of the Charleston area, just to the west of Oak Hill. 2-inch diameter hail being reported by this storm. And let's break down this environment as well. Wow. Let's see the rotation. Zooming in on the high resolution velocity here. This is on the Radar Omega app. The velocity, not surprisingly, is quite broad and diffuse. So right now, this does look like it has tornado potential. These are outbound velocities from the Charleston radar, so you've got a very strong rear flank downdraft here. The winds in that rear flank downdraft are parallel to the storm motion that's adding a little bit. The rear flank downdraft winds could even be quite damaging with the storm as it moves off to the southeast. And then you've got the inflow coming in here around the eastern side, but usually with a tornado producer, you would certainly see a more tight couplet if this did have a tornado on the ground. 1.25-inch hail being indicated. It's for north central Raleigh County and southeastern West Virginia, southwestern Fayette County until 2:30 p.m. At 1:53, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado is near Burnwell, or 11 miles west of Fayetteville, moving southeast at 35 miles an hour. Hail up to the size of $0.50. I wouldn't be surprised if there were even larger hailstones with this because it has such a deep, intense mesocyclone on this storm. Let's look at the radar loop on this. And you can really see that rear flank downdraft surge out just a bit. See that rear flank downdraft surge out and wrap around. You've got some cyclonic curvature to that hook-like appendage. Moving off to the southeast quite rapidly. Inflow coming in on the southeastern side of it here. If you live in Mount Hope or Pax areas, you definitely want to be in your safe place. Beckley, keep an eye on this. I know you're a large population center down there in Beckley relatively. So this storm is moving off to the south-southeast and certainly could cause some problems between Mount Hope, Beckley, and the Oak Hill areas. Keeping a very close eye on this storm now. Thanks for the heads up, you guys. Let's now look at the environment. Ooh, I see. Stand by. Here's that radar breakdown. Sorry for not changing the slide. I'll go through this again. 2-inch diameter hail or so easily could be possible with this storm. Here's the high resolution radar image, and you can certainly see that cyclonic curvature within that hook-like appendage there. The inflow coming in on the east side, Pax, Mount Hope, Oak Hill areas. You want to be in your safe place. It does look like the circulation is going to pass just to the west of the Oak Hill area, heading right in the direction of Mount Hope and Pax though. And this rear flank downdraft is probably where some very damaging winds here just on the west side of that mesocyclone, because the wraparound winds there are parallel with that southeasterly storm motion. And I bet this storm has very large hail too, because it has a strengthening mesocyclone, greater upward motion as well. You can suspend those large hailstones for a longer time up in the storm. Again, this tornado warning expires in about 29 minutes. It's in effect for north central Raleigh County in southeastern West Virginia, southwestern Fayette. At 1:53, about 7 to 10 minutes ago, the tornado was located near Burnwell, or 11 miles west of Fayetteville, and it is moving off to the southeast at 35 miles an hour. Definitely a storm to keep an eye out. A lot of precipitation in the wake of this system, of this mesocyclone too. So this is the first tornado warning of the day, and it is in a bit of a surprise location here, right in the middle of West Virginia. And it is, as I mentioned, heading in the general direction of the Beckley area. So definitely keep an eye on it if you do live in Beckley. I think it's going to pass just here east, but still, you got to keep an eye on this thing. If it does turn to the right, that would be more of this type of emotion. Definitely a storm to keep an eye on. Let's take a look again now at the high resolution velocity with this storm. And as I mentioned, it's really that rear flank downdraft that's about to slam packs. That's going to be an issue because it's parallel to the storm motion. You've got to add the storm motion to those wind velocities. And so I would be surprised if we see some damage coming out of the packs area here shortly. But that circulation, albeit broad, is going to be just to the east of packs, it appears, heading in the direction of Mount Hope. There is a chance of a brief tornado with this, but this rotation certainly does look quite broad. I would say that there's more of a potential for damage within the RFD winds here when those strong northwesterlies come in just on the west side of that mesocyclone. But it does have a lot of storm relative inflow coming in here, exacerbated by that. So let's take a look at the environment that this storm is nested within. Looks like this is ahead of the yesterday's system just a bit. Here's the RAP analysis. You can see this band of supercell storms, and it's this lead one that has a tornado warning right now. And look at that, you've got surface winds of about 5 knots out of the due west. So it doesn't scream tornado environment, but then you look at the 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative velocity, and it's about 50 to 100 units. Generally, you need greater than about 100 to 150 to have a non-zero tornado threat. But this is non-zero helicity. It definitely drops off further west across northern Kentucky, and that's likely why these are just severe with mainly hail producers. The instability, you've got a bit of a nose punching in here of instability, interestingly, with these westerly winds coming across northern Kentucky into western West Virginia. So there is a bit of an elevated mix layer that's coming in from west to east, and these storms are firing right in the nose of that. There's also some better dewpoints too, advecting in from west to east. It looks like the dewpoints here where that storm is 56, upper 50s maybe. So the dewpoints are certainly marginal. It's probably quite a high base storm out there, but definitely an interesting one nonetheless. Let's see what the 850 millibar winds look like. West-northwest at about 20 knots. So this doesn't scream tornado environment out there, but you've got moisture, marginal wind shear, strong deep layer shear, and dry air punching in to steepen those lapse rates. And that's creating this first mode of severe weather this early afternoon across northern Kentucky into western West Virginia. But explosive severe weather development expected to the northwest of St. Louis first, spreading into central Illinois, and then moving off to the southeast into this deeper moisture. You can see why there's so much mixing indicated by the HRRR. It's because that moisture is quite shallow on the northwestern periphery of this blob. This is 850 millibars, and you can see very limited moisture just to the northwest of the blob, but deep moisture southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, and where these storms are firing now across northern Kentucky into western West Virginia. So thank you everybody for joining me. I'm going to continue these lives throughout the day and through the evening as the severe weather continues to evolve. Stay safe, stay tuned to those watches and warnings, stay well out there, and Saturday and Sunday is going to be a big day. We'll break that down later on once the new models are out this afternoon. And I want to see if the European model, or if the GFS model continues to trend toward the European and NAM. The NAM looks like a slower solution as well, which favors a more significant severe weather event on Saturday and Sunday, but I'll certainly break these down in future live briefings, starting with the Facebook supporter community tomorrow and the next days. And then as we get a little bit closer to Saturday and Sunday, I'll take a deeper dive into that severe weather event. So thanks again, everybody. Stay safe in the severe weather area and watch out for those large chunks of ice falling from the sky.